I'm old, but I'm. Good evening, sir.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
welcome.
welcome.
Okay,
Osamu
Osamu
Diame
Diame John,
John,
right?
right?
Am I
Am I
correct?
correct?
Osemu
Yeah,
Osemu
Diame
Diame
John.
John.
but you
Okay,
say something now. You people should forgive me for him.
what did she say? Okay, okay, all right. No, okay, no problem. All right, so let's just proceed because of time. Okay, so let's go straight to the Bible text. Pastor Ovi, I don't know if you can read for us.
Okay.
Hebrews, Reverend read from Hebrews 5 verse 12 to 14, NLT version.
Okay. Hebrews 5 verse 12 to 14.
Yeah.
You have been believers so long now that you ought to be teaching others. Instead, you need someone to teach you again the basic things about God's word. You are like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food. For someone who lives on milk is still an infant and doesn't know how to do what is right. Solid food is for those who are mature, who through training have the skill to recognize the difference between right and wrong.
Wrong. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So let's go to the body of the. So last Sunday, Reverend emphasized on the fact that every child of God ought to know the voice of God, but we lack the confidence to recognize and act on it. Reverend said doubt comes because there are other voices that are loud in our ears, and the reason is because we have not yet developed our senses to discern God's voice. Now, trust is another issue. Okay, believers don't trust God enough. They feel it's either too hard or it doesn't agree with their whole reality. How can we overcome these obstacles and begin to clearly discern God's voice? Okay, so let's discuss how we can overcome the obstacle of hearing God's voice and how to discern God's voice. All right, so I want to ask the first question. Reflecting on the teaching, how can one be sure that he's truly being led by God? You know, this is always the confusion. How can one be really sure? So when you hear people say, God told me, the Spirit of God said, how sure are you that they really heard from God? You know, it's something really to ponder about, Pastor. It's something to think about. So how can you truly be sure that you are being led by God?
Okay. Yes.
Pastor, the question is
Before
to you
before we
before-
proceed, okay,
All right.
there's a response here from Diola on
Okay.
that icebreaker.
All right.
It says, "Omona God voice, oh, God's voice lasts forever. Forget about number of years, Joe."
Okay. But the question was for one here, right?
Yes.
So maybe she's talking about the impact of God's voice.
Okay.
Lasts forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because the question was for 1 year. So Pastor, I want to ask you this question
Okay.
before we actually to people out there. So how okay, when you're a pastor, I know you hear from God every time, so you really tell us how it happens. How can one really be sure that he's truly being led by God?
Okay. Excuse me. All right. To be sure that you are led by God, God has a deep voice. The voice is
like
deep.
baritone.
Yes. If it's not that deep, maybe it's not the voice of God. Of course, we know that is not. God's voice doesn't mirror what we hear or see on Hollywood